My wife doesn't even know this stuff. I never talked to anybody about it.
My name is Destiny. I'm going to be 26 in about 2 weeks. I am a full-time mom to an almost 2-year-old. I am due with my second child the first week of December. I don't know why, but I always grew up with a voice in the back of my head saying that I couldn't trust my mom. My mom is a really nice person if she's not your mom. I was raised as both an only child and the youngest of 8. My dad has 8 children, but they all have different mothers to me, so I was my mom's only child. Both of my parents are very loud. They are definitely yellers, and unfortunately I inherited that. Because my dad wasn't in the house with us, she took on the more domineering role. My mom is always saying in the church, my dad has always played in the church. Until I was old enough to be left alone, I was literally in church 5 or 6 days out of the week. And I now know that's considered excessive to a lot of people, but to me it was just normal.
Your childhood is everything about who you are now. I was taught to be a little human, not a little child. Growing up in a religious family can be a blessing and a curse. I had that to fall back on. If I didn't have that, I don't know where I would be. But my mother was raised a pastor's daughter, and my dad pastored several churches. So when you're in that light, you are a visual representation of the church, which is a lot of pressure. I was a very good kid all through high school. I never did anything racy or anything. I was president of the Jesus clubs, and I became the visual representation I was supposed to be.
My name is Daryl Armstrong. I am a pastor. So I like to say that my mother, the late Janice Armstrong, was a pretty resilient young woman. She got pregnant at an early age. She was 14 when she got pregnant and 15 when she gave birth to me. So I'm the oldest of her 4 boys. And very sadly, all 4 of her boys were removed from her custody at different points in our lives because of essentially child abuse and neglect. I even remember Mom's boyfriend putting a marijuana joint up to my mouth. Powder on the table. I look back, they were snorting cocaine, they were shooting heroin in front of a 3-year-old. So I remember the hits on the head. I remember the swats. And the court records say that my baby brother was removed from my mom's custody because of multiple contusions on his head, with what eventually became multiple contusions on my brother's brain at 1.5-year-old.
Both were really quick to pop me in the mouth or in the arm or something. I would never remember because I was so scared, because I knew after the talk I would be getting beat with a belt. But that was their go-to method for most offenses. I wouldn't try to avoid doing what I did. I would just try to avoid getting caught. And that's all it taught me. And I was a very picky eater. And I didn't like corn. I still don't like corn. But my mom was upset because I refused to eat it. And I now know she was upset because that was the last food in the house, and she didn't have enough for her to eat. But she went and she got a belt and she just kept hitting me. And I finally started putting the food in my mouth. And I don't know if it's because of how upset I was or because I was stuffing too much in her mouth to try to stop her from hitting me, but eventually I threw it back up. I know I was made to clean it up. And she said that I did it on purpose to get out of eating, which I didn't. What's interesting to me is that people who say spanking isn't abuse will always say, well, that time was abusive. But to me, that time was no different than any other time. The only thing different was my reaction. She's definitely hit me harder at times. That's not considered abuse. But because I threw up that time, it's considered abuse by a lot of people.
One night, this boyfriend asked us to come in to take a bath. And I was out having a great time with my little brother. And what I didn't know was that they were doing drugs. They were shooting heroin, smoking crack in the house. When I got into the house, he was angry. He was upset. He immediately kind of yells at us, hits us, strips my baby brother's clothes off, runs a tub of scalding hot water, and he submerges my 2-year-old brother in a tub of scalding hot water. I don't remember the sequence of things after that. I just know we wound up in LA County General Hospital. Somebody called the police, somebody called the ambulance. My brother stayed in the hospital because of his, what they later I learned to be 2nd and 3rd degree burns over 2/3 of his body. That night was the last night we ever really kind of lived together as a family. At the time, I felt helpless. I felt shock. Clearly, there was a sense of trauma of watching my brother scream and yell. And so there's kind of a blank there. There's kind of the sense of, did I blank all that immediate aftermath out? And I would almost question the veracity of all this if I didn't read it on paper. So I carried around kind of this heavy guilt, and like I was responsible. And then you can't be responsible for adult actions. Children are not responsible for what adults do. I obviously conclude the drugs were the impetus behind what happened. But what makes a grown man put a 2-year-old baby in a tub of scalding hot water is still beyond me.
I think there's parts of my memory that I've shut out when it has to do with like dad spanking us. Punishment in general was always different with mom, and spanking ended quicker with mom than it did with dad. I think she definitely left the parenting over to my dad at that time because she had a lot going on. But she was happiness. So I guess because she was happiness, I never feared her. I always pushed my boundaries more with my mother than I did with my dad. I don't think that I ever pushed my boundaries with my dad. It's hard to rewire your system at any time, but especially with that, it was psychological warfare. You know, even if it was like 2 licks, he waited till he got in the room to take off his belt, you know. It was always a belt. It was always bare-bottomed. It was always, I do this because I love you. And it's crazy when you say it out loud, because it's like, he thought about it. He processed it. He did what he was thinking was right. And I don't think I ever felt like I disappointed mom. But with dad, I did. And like I said, I was a terror with my mom, but like with my dad, it was being a child. It was being a child. I was a kid, being a kid. But gosh, like, I love to draw and paint, and sometimes I missed and got it on the carpet, and I would try to cover it up, and I'd get spanked for that. But when it was my brother and I don't think that it mattered that if one of us did it or the other one did it. There was a point in my adolescence where I always thought my brother was a tattletale, but I think that was because looking back, that he feared getting punished because he had been punished so much for doing things that weren't his fault, or he was just being a kid. I could have taken 1,000 whippings on the butt, but I think that it humiliated my brother for him to have his little sister watch him get whipped. I think he wished he could have stepped in and taken it from me. I don't know if that my brother and I would have as close as a relationship as we do today if I didn't have his hand to hold while we were sitting waiting to get punished for something. Gosh.
I don't remember saying this, but apparently I said to my aunt that I would just get really angry and I would see red. I had to be around like 5 or 6 when I said that. And I do. I remember being a really angry kid, and I felt like they didn't love me. And I got into a lot of fights. It really got bad in 5th grade. I guess it was over the summer, because I just know when I got back there 5th grade, I said, like, this is my last year, and I wasn't dealing with that, because that's when I said that I had enough, and I would fight anybody over any little thing they did to me, because I decided that I wasn't going to let anyone do anything to me anymore. I remember I fought a girl over a pencil because she tried to take my pencil. I fought a boy over a quarter. I seriously fought half of my class.
I went to a foster home, an emergency shelter, for a week, as I look at the records now. Another one for a month and a half, and then a third foster home for about 1 year and 2 months. And my early years with my grandfather were traumatic, right? I have to adjust into a family where I'm pretty clear I really wasn't wanted. So I early on felt like the outside kid. I later stumbled on the poem, The Ugly Duckling, by Hans Christian Andersen. And man, did that poem kind of strike a chord. I thought I was the ugly duckling. I credit my step-grandmother for taking me to church for the first time on a consistent basis. And so the church quickly became a refuge, like pretty early on in my life. God wasn't the one coming down, but God was sending people to help provide for me. Literally, I can go to church and see strong men in the church, deacons, the pastor. I can see loving mothers who embraced and hugged. Gotta be a mother when I don't have one. Gotta be a father when I don't have one. And any kid knows you can feed them, you can clothe them, you can put a roof, but if they don't get nurture, love, attachment, and bonding, that kid is also going to be emotionally deprived. And I'd get all that at church. Oh, Daryl, come here, give me a hug. right? Oh, Daryl, you're doing great in Sunday school. I got educational affirmation in Sunday school more so than I got it in real school. But that gave me confidence in real school to feel that I was smart. I can do it.
I don't remember when my dad stopped spanking me. I think maybe when I was 13 or so. But his words became different. It did become, like, it teetered towards religion. You know, like if he knew I was lying about something, he would say stuff like, instead of being like, I know you lied about this, and just being straight up about it, he would be like, God knows the truth. And the truth will come out. Which really messed me. It was like, it paints a picture of God as some guy sitting up there with like a, shotgun, just waiting for you to mess up and strike you down. There was no one to believe me that things were happening. So, no one was believing the truth, so I became a pathological liar. I got on drugs. I had a great job. I lost it. I lost all my friends. I was homeless. And I kept lying even after I met this amazing woman. And I lied through the beginning of our relationship, and I lost her because of the lying. But losing her changed my life completely. I stopped lying. I promised to never lie. And even now, I can't even tell a fib. And I never became honest to get her back, but I did. And now she's my wife.
My dad had to stop spanking me around or before I hit puberty. But I know in African American cultures, once a girl starts getting to like puberty age, the dad's not expected to hit her anymore. It's mostly to do with not letting her get into the habit of letting men hit her, which doesn't really make sense because he was hitting her before. But if I had a husband right now and he did half of the things that my mom did to me, or that they even do to their own children, nobody would question that it's abusive, and they would question why it would stay there. But I'm supposed to be grateful because my mom did it, and because she was doing the best she could. And that's supposed to just make it all okay.
In April of my senior year of high school, I actually had to move out of my step-grandmother's home after she divorced my grandfather. She was really the only maternal figure I had. I ultimately don't regret that I had to take kind of mastery and ownership of my life. I knew what I wanted. I had already been accepted to Stanford. I knew where I was going. And education is the ticket out of poverty. But you've got to have something else to kind of undergird that as well. And by the time I started my seminary training, I really kind of had a intense reflection about where my life was going. And that call to ministry was rooted not just to preach, although preaching is a part of what I do. It's really about changing lives, to protect children, but also prevent child abuse by making families stronger. How do you make families stronger? You give them the supports that they need in their communities before they get into crisis. Why wait till children are in the river to keep pulling them out? Let's go upstream and figure out why they're falling into the river in the first place.
if I really need to talk to my dad about something, I can. I think that I know he has regrets. At least he's proud of us, and he knows we love him. So that's a good spot to fill, is that he's not disappointed anymore.
It definitely impacted the relationship with my child's father. Anytime I get in a fight with my child's father, I always think in the back of my mind he's going to hit me, even though he's never hit me. It makes it hard to make friends with other moms because I see them doing it. I see them laughing over it, and I'll see their kids crying, and I just feel so bad for their kids. Even though I know that's how they were raised and that they didn't know better, I still feel like they should have tried better. And then on the other side, I don't want to expose my son to that because he's never been exposed to any type of violence, really. If you raise your hand to him, if you raise a belt to him, he would never be scared. He has no association with fear. And I never want him to gain that association or think that it's okay to treat people like that.
Your kid's a person too. So that's why I love hanging out with my niece without anyone trying to tame her. She's become her own person. It's awesome. And yeah, when she was like 4 or 5, you would take her to a restaurant and she would climb over the backs of the chairs, but she was 4 or 5.
And I would be lying if I didn't tell you there are moments where I thought about how do I get this message to my son who's not getting the message right now. Do I spank him? And I had to take a step back and learn one of the basic lessons of parenting: never discipline while you're angry. Never discipline while you're angry.
To me, it's just as simple as you don't hurt people. Like, mothers claim that they love their children more than anything. So if you do, you should treat them like that. There's no one else that you would hit, even if you were allowed to hit for the most part. So you shouldn't treat the person that's entrusted to you like that.
We impact how our parishioners parent. And if we tell them, spare the rod, spoil the child, beat that child so you don't spoil that child, that's irresponsible. Because in a Judeo-Christian setting, that is not the accurate and adequate exegesis, interpretation of those texts. And yet we allow them to be interpreted that way. Preachers give it to people that way. So we get church-sanctioned spanking. We get church-sanctioned hitting. Is that really the way you want to love a child? To beat them?
My mom used the poem that's based off the Bible verse, "Spare the rod, spoil the child," to justify spanking. In the Bible, the rod isn't meant to be something you beat someone with. The rod is talking about a shepherd's rod that they use to guide their flock.
What I do in my home is my private business, what many people say. No, it's my business too, because when you beat that child, someone's got to care for that child. And if we take that child away from you, someone's got to raise that child. So what you do in your home isn't just impacting you. So I am full on, all in, about using my life, my background, my experiences. Not because I did it, you can do it. That's being paternalistic. But because others have done it, it can be done. You can be different. You can be better. You can overcome. You can love a kid to life.
I'm happy. I'm happy with who I am, no matter what the journey was to get here. Yeah. Love. Love. That's how I survived.